Hello, my doom scribblers. So we are going to talk about the shape of a chapter today. Kate Downs, probably about 6 weeks ago, asked me about the shape of a chapter. And collectively, in all 5 rooms, we did not have enough vocabulary in common to talk about the shape of a chapter at that point. And I knew that there was a lot coming down the pike. And I'm pretty sure, I said this to another writer today, if we could look down the road and see what was coming at us, we might not do a lot of the things that we need to do. And I think if I had said to you, you're going to do 3-4 edits of these chapters before they are a shape that they need to be for this form of storytelling, a bunch of you would have bailed. And you would have bailed for the wrong reason. You would have bailed because it looked like it was so overwhelming, rather than understanding that you learn this in pieces, you write in layers. Even if you don't write, say Justin, who I called out in my editing document yesterday, even if you don't write clean, straightforward commercial fiction right from the get-go, you can still edit your way to greatness. And so the editing document that I put up in the room yesterday is a kind of primer for what you need to consider when you are shaping a chapter. You can't start shaping any chapter until you know what the premise of your book or series is. We've got that nailed. Everybody knows what their premise is. Everybody can state their premise clearly in 1 to 2 sentences. We've got the stakes. We know what the stakes are. And one of the great things about post-apoc is you've got stakes built in. You've got public stakes built in. And almost always you've got private stakes, and we've worked pretty hard at getting private stakes. And once you've got your premise sorted and you've got the stakes sorted out, then you're looking for the character who you're going to make relatable, not likable, relatable. And that's why we worked so hard on misbelief, because we want this character to have a flaw. The premise is what happens. So the premise is all about plot. The stakes are about a mix of plot and story, because the public stakes are very much about plot, but the private stakes are about why it matters to a particular character. And that's story. That's the essence of story. And then for the hero's journey, you add in this flaw, which particularly means that they are unsuited for this challenge. They are the last person who should go on this journey, and they are the person who must, because they are the person who will learn and will change for this kind of novel. We are writing novels for our main protagonists, and particularly for our alpha protagonists. We are writing stories of redemption, where the character changes. So we've got a situation. Character starts out in one place, in one mental state, in one emotional state. They go through all of these trials, which are the goal, attack, thwart patterns that we see in every chapter, and they change so that they can meet these goals and overcome a challenge that has super high stakes for them and, in our case, the world. So you need to know those things before you start writing a chapter. And then I think the question that Kate was actually asking was, what does a chapter look like then? We start with our opening hook. Our opening hook compels the reader to read on. It is the most exciting thing that is going to grab the reader and pull them in. And we're looking for a very particular kind of reader. We're looking for a reader who wants to read these kinds of books. So I've been pushing you towards starting something that is action-oriented and based very much in an image. We want something happening that we can see. And once you've got your opening hook, then we need to know what the goal is. What is the goal of this character? The character is right there in your opening sentences, and something terrible is happening, the hook, And then they've got a goal. And the goal in commercial fiction is really clear. What they want is really clear. And the attack on that goal, what gets in the way, is also really clear. Now, if you're writing literary fiction, that particular setup could be different. The goal might not be as clear, it might not be as transparent, but you're still going to have a goal. This is why I say for the fundamentals of storytelling, you do not need to get genre specific. That comes much later down the road. But for the absolute fundamentals of the modern novel, you are opening with an opening hook. You've got your protagonist right there. Your main protagonist is right there on the page, and they have a goal. And then they have got something that gets in the way of that goal. And the flaw that they bring to this challenge means that overcoming that goal is really hard for them. It might not be hard for somebody else, but it's really hard for them. And they have to make a decision. And at the beginning of the book, they've got a ton of decisions that they could make. There are infinite roads that they could go down. But they go down one road, which means that now there are fewer choices open to them. And with each chapter, what you want to be doing is taking away the choices that they have remaining to them until you get all the way to the dark night of the soul when the ally attacks. And there is only one choice. And the only choice is to go for it. Absolutely. They must overcome the biggest hurdle of all to go into the final battle where they are changed. They're actually changed the minute they decide that they're going to go for it. So you have got your opening hook, you've got your goal really clear on the page, you've got your protagonist resisting the action, not quite knowing what to do, you've got the antagonist. Now, we talked about this early on. The antagonist can be the apocalypse. It can be the environment. But for our readers, the most rewarding kind of antagonist is going to be another human being. If you're writing in space opera, it might not be another human being. If you're writing in fantasy, it might not be another human being. But in our brand of post-apoc, it is going to be another human being. And so you can have your character in some of your chapters, what they need to overcome, the thwart that happens, the challenge, the attack that happens that stops them from reaching their goal is going to be either the apocalypse, but more often than not, it's going to be the antagonist in a human form. Then what else do we need in a chapter? At some point, we need this ally character to be around. Sooner is better. We don't always see the ally early on in the book. And as I was talking to one of the groups, there is a character who her misbelief is that she makes terrible decisions and she shouldn't make decisions. She should make other people make decisions for her. And as the apocalypse happens, her ex-husband shows up, and he is an appalling character who is very, very complex, very, very well written. Not a cardboard cutout at all. You absolutely understand the dynamics of why she would stay with him and why she would put up with what he's doing. And he makes decisions, and he particularly stops her from going to rescue her daughter, who is across the country in another state. And he convinces her that it's too dangerous out there. The ground is exploding beneath their feet. She would do it wrong anyway. They don't have the equipment that they need. And he actually holds her prisoner. Then the neighbors attack, and there's lots of she's hitting the tropes. She's really hitting the tropes. And there's somebody, a next door neighbor, who is kind of in love with her and has never declared himself. And he looks like he's going to be the ally. He really looks like he's going to be the person who says, why do you put up with this, Evelyn? Why do you listen to him? He's always been bad for you. He's still bad for you. But that's not what happens, because we took it down a different route. So in the expectation of the reader, we've got the pieces. We understand the apocalypse. We understand who the main protagonist is. We understand her flaw. We understand who the antagonist is and what they want. We see the conflict between these two characters really clear on the page. She is moving through her misbelief and it changes with every chapter. The stakes are getting higher. Time is moving on. Things are getting worse. Her husband ties her to a bed at one point, her ex-husband. But when they go back to the neighbours who have been attacking them, they go back to these neighbours' house and these twin boys who are absolute reprobates. They've left a voicemail message that says, "We are going to Colorado and we are going to find your daughter and we are going to do unthinkable things to her." And that's the ally attack moment. It doesn't look like an ally, but what the ally attacks means is there's a moment in the narrative when your main protagonist gets a kick in their misbelief that changes them utterly. And from that moment, she goes from "I can make no decision" to "I am the only decision maker. I am going to save my daughter. Get out of my way. Mama Bear is in charge right now, and no one is going to get in my way." And then in book 2, she makes bad decisions over and over again that get her into more and more trouble. So in book 1, we have her overcoming her original misbelief, and she flips that on its head. And when she flips it, that is the setup for book 2. So the inciting incident for book 2 is actually in book 1. We're going to be talking more and more about how you write a series, but this is a really good example of how you make this interlocking set of stories and what you do if your character, for example, has a 1-book arc overcoming that misbelief, changing, and then what you do with the misbelief for the next book as they go on that journey to change, because it's always about a character that changes. So back to what else is in your chapter when you are molding a chapter. You've got your opening hook, you've got your protagonist on the page. They've got a goal that is very clear. They've got the antagonist who is very clear. They have possibly got an ally, although that might not come for quite a long time. It might be there and it might not. But we've got conflict and we've got ongoing conflict and we've got things getting worse and we've got a character who makes decisions that make things worse. They always make things worse. The scale of how bad things get and the depth of the kind of appalling things that can happen are going to be genre dependent. That is genre dependent. So in romance, for example, we are going to be seeing the characters make really bad decisions, but they're not going to be life and death decisions. They're going to be life and death of the heart decisions. But it's still the same basic shape. The shape of the chapter and the shape of the book is fundamentally the same. What else you're going to be doing? You're going to be setting up things that will pay off much, much later. So you want twists that are in your story, complications that are in your story that are going to pay off. Now, depending on whether you plot or you're a pantser or you're a plantser, when that happens, when you discover what those twists are, is going to vary. It might be in the planning stage. It might be when you're reading through in your final edit, you're like, oh, I can go back and see that. I've got this really juicy thing that pays off. And I want you to do that in your edits. When you see these high emotional points that you're hitting throughout, you've got these pinch points when things change in the hero's journey. Look at those points and see whether or not you can do any foreshadowing. See if you can set it up. See if that conflict can already be in play. See if there is some kind of metaphor or simile or something that you can set in motion that will pay off later. Everything on the page counts. Everything counts. And so, setting something up to pay off later is a really easy thing to do once you know that. You've got things that you're setting up, and then as you're weaving these chapters together, you're setting up new challenges, new questions, new things that are going to get in the way of your character, but you're also answering other threads. So we've got things that pay off in later chapters. I can see that I am frozen on the screen, and as I look down, I see we're already at 15 minutes. All right. You know what? I'm going to do a second video today as well, because we're not done talking, but my computer's already freezing up. So we're going to stop and restart. All right, I'll be back, Doom Scribblers.